Hi again, Mark here from TalkingBass.net with the third in the series of lessons on getting started with improvisation. Now, if you've not been over to TalkingBass.net yet, then go check it out. The lesson material for this video and all the practice tracks are available to download over there. If you're watching on TalkingBass.net, then just hit that big download link below the video. You can also find all the practice tracks used in this improvisation lesson, well, at least most of them, on the practice tracks page. So you can just hit the tab just above. There's an audio player on there with a playlist containing all the triads and all the seventh chords. So just click on that and click on the chord that you want, and then you'll get about 5 minutes of that chord, a static chord that you can just practice your improvisation over. Okay? So we've already had a look at the basic two-note phrases, and now we can start to generate melodic material just from those smaller seeds. So next, let's have a look at three-note phrases. Now, there's a load of different rhythms that we can use for these, a lot more than with two. We could use short, quick phrases like this. Or at the other extreme, we could use long, laid-back phrases like this. So obviously you can come up with your own rhythms, but for now, we'll just try one of those more laid-back rhythms like this. Okay? So let's just have a quick refresher on the sound of the chord tones and the sound of that phrase by just using each of the chord tones in sequence and applying it to that phrase. So we'll just use C major 7 for now, but remember it's important to apply these exercises to every type of chord and from a variety of different root notes. So here we have the chord tones over that backing track, okay? So this is C major 7. So in order, we've got C major 7, so we have C, E, G and B. So root notes. Now we'll go to the third, E. Now to the fifth, G. Now to the seventh, B. Again, as per the last lesson, I'm going to be sticking with the C major 7 up here at the 15th fret. Okay, and I'll be just using it within that one octave for now. But remember, it's also important, you could try down here. You could try up at the 8th fret here, E string. You know, just move around. I'm just working up here for the sake of clarity for the video. Now let's work through some chord tone permutations. Because we have three notes to fill, we've actually got a start, a middle and an end, okay? So we're just going to start on the root note, first of all, and then we'll work through each of the chord tones in sequence. And I'm not going to be using any repetition with any two consecutive notes. So for instance, I won't have 1, 1, or 3, 3, or 5, 5. I do repeat in terms of coming back to one once we've gone to another one, but again, you'll see this as I work through them. Also, because the list is quite long, there's quite a few to work through, I'll actually provide a list in the download, okay, and you'll see some of them on screen too. So let's start with those. We've first of all got the root note, so that's 1, and then we work to 3, okay, so we have 1, 3, 1, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 7. Okay, so that was 1, 3, and then just the other chord tones working through them. So next up we have 1, 5. So we have 1, 5, 1, 1, 5, 3, 1, 5, 7. And lastly we have 1, 7. So we have 1, 7, 1, 1, 7, 3, 1, 7, 5. Okay, and I'm using that 7th up here. I'm not working down to the 7th because, as I said, I'm trying to stay just within that one octave and limit what we do. But obviously, as you branch out, you can start using any of these chord tones anyway. I mean, you could have the C here for the root, and you could have the 5th right down here if you really wanted to. But for now, we'll just stick to that one octave. So now you've got a taster for how that system works. I'll just start incorporating the backing track so we can hear how they work over the chord, okay? So we'll go through those same permutations again, but with the backing track. So this is C major 7. And I'm going to play each permutation twice so we get a feel for the sound of them, okay? So 1, 3, 1. 1, 3, 5. 1, 3, 7. Now to 1, 5. 1, 5, 1. 1, 5, 3. 1, 5, 7. Now to 1, 7. So that was 1, 7, 1. Now 1, 7, 3. And 1, 7, 5. Okay? So now let's try starting on the third. So we're going to apply that same concept to all the chord tone permutations, but starting on the third. So we'd have 3, 1, 3, 3, 1, 5, 3, 1, 7. Okay, so the first two notes were 3, 1, and then we just worked through the chord tones in order. Okay, so we'll apply these to the backing track, and I will play each one of these twice, so again, so that we get a good idea about this sound. Okay. So first of all, 3, 1, 3. Now 3, 1, 5. 3, 1, 7. Now 3, 5, 1. 3, 5, 3. 3, 5, 7. 3, 7, 1. 3, 7, 3. 3, 7, 5. Okay. Now we'll try exactly the same thing, but starting on the fifth. Okay, so again with the backing track. So start with 5, 1, 3. 5, 1, 5. 5, 1, 7. 5, 3, 1. 5, 3, 5. 5, 3, 7. 5, 7, 1. 5, 7, 3. And 5, 7, 5. Okay, so I'm not going to stop now. I'll just move on to the seventh. So starting on the seventh, sorry, and we'll just go through all the same chord tone combinations again. Okay, so again, I'm going to be starting on this high seventh. Okay, so we have 7, 1, 3 to start. 7, 1, 5. 7, 1, 7. 7, 3, 1. 735. 737. 751. 753. 757. So these are all just combinations that can be used in creating small phrases. They're obviously not the be-all and end-all of, phrasing. They're simply to be used as springboards for combinations of notes that you might not ordinarily thought of putting together. When you see some of these or hear them, you might just think, that's a nice little pattern, or I've never thought of that pattern before. And you can use that as a seed for a larger melody and, or even a smaller melody in your soloing. Now let's have a listen to how these chord tone combinations can sound over a completely different chord. Now, as I mentioned last lesson, these chord tone permutations are really good for moving around through different chords, because unlike a lick, or that might be a finger pattern that you learn, these can be applied to different chords and you'll get completely different sounds out of them because it's just a formula that we're just applying to different chords, okay? So we'll start with the D7 and I'll just stick to the chord tone starting on the 3rd, just to save some time. But you can work through any of them as you see fit, okay? So here we go, 3, 1, 3. 5. So it's 3, 1, 7. And there's that flat 7 in there. Now let's move to 3, 5. So 3, 5, 1. 3, 5, 3. 3, 5, 7. Okay. Now we'll move to 3, 7. So 3, 7, 1. 3, 7, 3, 3, 7, 5. Okay? So notice how that sounds completely different. We've got a completely different set of sounds because we've applied them to a completely different chord. Now we'll try the same thing but with an A minor 7. Okay? So this time I'll start with the 7th and I'll just work through those chord tone permutations. Okay? So here's the A minor 7. So starting with the 7, so we'll have 7, 1, 3 first. 7, 1, 7. Okay, and now we'll move to 7, 3, so 7, 3, 1. 7, 3, 5. 7, 3, 7. Okay, now we move to 7, 5. So 7, 5, 1. 7, 5, 3. 7, 5, 7. Okay. Now let's try something a little different. We'll try G7 sharp 5. So this is going to be using the notes G, B, D sharp for the sharp 5 and F. So it's like a G7 but with a sharpened 5th, okay? So we'll stick with some easy chord tones for this. So we'll start with we'll just use the root note as the first note and just work through them, okay? So first of all we've got 1, 3, 1. 3, 5. 1, 3, 7. Okay, again we've got that flat 7 up there. Now we've got 1, 5, 1. 1, 5, 3. 1, 5, 7. Okay, so we've got the sharp 5 and the flat 7 in there. So now we've got 1, 7, 1. 1, 7, 3. 1, 7 sharp 5. Okay. So as I've mentioned before, you want to just listen out to the sound of these chord tones over the chords, okay? So as we were playing there, we get to hear what the sharp 5 sounds like over the G7 sharp 5 and what that flat 7 sounds like, you know, the colour of those tones. And then also, as an extension to that, how they sound when you cadence on them, you know, the final note. You know, like I said, that's a very important note. You know, really drawing attention to it as we hold it there. And even if, you know, even if you don't, like I've said before, it's the final destination. Another way of looking at these arpeggio patterns in this 3-note phrase way is to use sequences. Okay, now some of these patterns are going to be the same as the ones that we've already used, the same permutations, but just from a completely different perspective. Okay, so one way of working through these sequences is just in terms of threes. Okay, so that would look like this. Let's say we take the C major 7 arpeggio again, C, E, G, B, and if we work up from the C, 1, 3, 5, then we move up to the next chord tone, the 3, so 3, 5, 7, and then from the 5th, 5, 7, and the octave there. Okay, so 3 consecutive chord tones together from each consecutive chord tone. So, and we can play them consistently through as a line, or we can take them in isolation and use them as melodic fragments. Okay, and you can hear how that creates a kind of ascending line, which is good for running up to a certain note. Okay, so I ran up to the 7th there, and this is the same system as we were using with the sequences in the last lesson. So it's quite tough to get much out of these sequences just within that one octave. So if we expand the arpeggio a little so that we've got a few more notes to play with on the neck, we can make a little bit more of that actual sequence pattern. So first of all, let's move down to the 7th, just below the root note there. So because I'm up here at the 15th fret, we're going to take it there at the 14th, which is the B. So if we started from that 7th there and ran up through the sequence, so we've got the 7, 1, 3, so we've got another little pattern added there. Okay, and then if we extended it even more, let's take the G down here on the E string, 15th fret there. That gives us another fragment, so 5, 7, 1. Okay, so we add that to the line. Okay, so as I work up again. And they're actually quite nice technical exercises in their own way. And it's not actually too far out of the way to actually come down to the E here, so the 3rd. So this is on the 12th fret of the E string, so then if I had that, we've got the 3rd, 5th, 7th. We can also play these sequences in reverse. So if I was to start the octave there and just come down in consecutive chord tones, we have root note, 7th, 5th, then start the 7th, 7, 5, 3, 5, 3, 1, 3, 1, 7, etc. So. Okay. Now let's have a listen to how those sequences sound over the backing track. Another simple 3-note phrase we can use in sequence like this is by taking any chord tone, like the root note, playing up to the next chord tone and back. Okay, so this is a little bit like using scale tones for little neighbour note functions like that, but we're just going up to a chord tone and back, okay? And it highlights the chord tone that we come back to, so because we're playing it twice and then just jumping away and coming back. So, and we can go up and back or down and back. Okay, so that would be C, E, C or C, B, C, okay? Okay, so we can also play these in sequence. So if we were going to play them from the root note, we could then play them from the third. So, and then from the fifth, and the seventh, which gives us, or using the descending pattern. Okay, and we could work down through them as well. Okay, so as a continuous line. Okay, so it's a similar kind of sequence as we had working through in groups of three, but we're just working up and back in this case. So a quick demonstration of those over the backing track. So you can hear how I'm highlighting each one of those chord tones by doing that. There's the seventh, the root, third. Came down that time. Now the fifth. Working around the fifth there, jumping up and jumping back. Seventh. And now to using the sequence again. Okay, so you can hear how there's an ascending kind of background line there. We can also use repetition of entire phrases and of individual notes to create more interest and longer lines of 4, 5, 6, 7, and more notes. So if we take a formula of 3, 7, 5, so E, B, G over that C major 7, and then we use the backing track, we can hear how that phrase, if I was to repeat it, especially together rhythmically, we actually have a 6-note phrase there, when in fact it really is a 3-note phrase, just repeated. The essence of the statement is still exactly the same. Okay, so we can apply this same principle to individual notes within there as well. So if I repeat the E, repeat the B, the G, or quicker repetition. Okay, so all of those kept that same flavour, the same kind of statement, but we were just moving around rhythmically and using repetition. Another thing we can do to make the most of this limited material is to break those 3-note phrases up into 2 smaller individual fragments that are within there. So if we take a 3-7-5 permutation again, there's 2 immediately noticeable fragments. We've got 3-7 there, the E to the B, and then we've got 7-5, which is the B to the G. Okay, so 3-7-5, we have 3-7 and 7-5, two-note phrases in this. So with the backing track, you can hear how we can use those. What we can do is emphasize certain parts of that phrase. Okay, so now let's try 3-7. 7. Okay, so it's got the same kind of flavour. Now the 7/5. Okay, so I'm just emphasising and kind of repeating part of the phrase just to make the most out of the phrase, really, to really milk it. Now we also have another less obvious fragment in there. So we've got 3, 7, 5. We've actually got 3 to 5. So that's less noticeable, but it's actually a really obvious one to use because we've actually got the start note and the end note. So in a way, it's actually closer to the sound of the original 3, 7, 5 than the other two fragments. So I have... So we're going straight there. We're starting and ending immediately. We don't have the middle bit there with the 7. So again, with the backing track. Okay, so I'm emphasising the cusps of the phrase. 3, 7. That's a 2-note fragment. 7, 5, and 3, 5. So once we get into this breaking up of phrases to get a little more mileage out of these limited resources, we can start to apply some other concepts like reversing the line. So let's stick with that 3, 7, 5, the E, B, G, and we'll play the phrase and then reverse it. So backwards we have 5, 7, 3. Okay, so we've started from the 3rd, we've made a journey from the 7th to the 5th, and then we've gone home. that's actually how it sounds. So it's not an alien phrase like 7, 3, 1, you know, which sounds completely different. This is actually taking that same phrase and then just playing it backwards, okay? So again, let's have a hear how it sounds over the backing track, and you'll hear how this actually can work out quite well as a question and answer phrase, okay? So. Okay, so we've got the question of and the response. And again, it's not the be-all and end-all of question answer phrases, but it's good as an introduction to how the sound of a phrase can be made like that, you know, with this question and answer. Okay. If we extend this concept to its logical conclusion, we can actually look at permutations of that single phrase, just as that phrase was a permutation of a set of chord tones. So it's a permutation of a permutation. So let's have a look at how they are and how they'll sound. So if we start with 3, 7, 5, you know, the original phrase, we could also voice that as 3, 5, 7. Okay, and then if we take the 7 as the starting note, we have 7, 3, 5, or 7, 5, 3. And then if we take the 5 there, the last note of it, 5, 3, 7, 5, 7, 3. Okay, so we've just got a complete set of permutations of that 3 notes, that 3-note grouping. Okay, so with the backing track, you'll hear how these all kind of have the same flavour because it's the sum total of those chord tones. You know, the 3rd has its flavour, the 7th has its flavour, the 5th has its flavour. So, you know, they're all amassing to create this one flavour. So, 3, 7, 5, now 3, 5, 7. Now 7, 3, 5, 7, 5, 3. And now 5, 7, 3. Or 5, 3, 7. Okay? Back to the original. Okay? So they all have a similar sound because of that, that grouping of the chord tones. These combinations are great for messing around with just to get used to creating melodic material from a limited number of notes. So originally we just used 2 notes in various combinations, but by just using 3 notes we've broadened our horizons a huge amount, and we're still only limiting ourselves. By combining the 2 and the 3 note permutations within a small group, we're generating extra material from what was actually originally just a small seed. So these concepts are used a lot in composition, especially modern day composition, when dealing with set theory and serial techniques and stuff like that. So as I've said before, don't just work through all the permutations in order, just as a solo. These permutations themselves are seeds and springboards for creating your own material, and some of the techniques or tips that I've just gone through are just methods for milking certain notes in there and just generating more stuff out of that initial seed. So there you've got a few practice tips to work on. So try using 2 note and 3 note phrases separately, and then try combining them in your improvisation, the component parts and all that. Pick a permutation like 3-7-5, and then just see how much you can do with that basic set of tones. Use repetition and sequencing to extend your lines, and pay particular attention to the climactic notes of each phrase. Use those notes as the foremost focus for the lines. The rest of this stuff, like the number of notes in the phrases, that's all going to be slightly different, and it's all just going to be different ways of getting to that target note from somewhere. So as I've mentioned before, these aren't rules in any way. They're just tips for limiting your practice and making you think about different melodic and rhythmic possibilities. Don't just stick to the stuff that I'm mentioning, improvise as much as possible and study melodies and solos by other players of all instruments, and look into how they create phrases and see if you can spot any of these basic ideas in their playing. Next lesson, we'll have a look at how we can use various methods of styling in your playing to make the most out of those limited resources, like slides, vibrato, stuff like that. So, as always, please like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel for regular updates. I release a lesson pretty much every week, so stay tuned for those. Then subscribe over at talkingbass.net to receive your free scale reference guide, and you'll also get regular updates to everything that I release direct to your inbox. I also give Skype lessons, so if you're interested in having any personal tuition, whatever your level, just drop me an email and we'll organise a date and time. Okay? See you later!